Hi, my name is Grace, and this is the Grace and Pearls Knitting Podcast. I've already tried to kick out the cats once, but I think Rosie has already made her presence noted, so we'll see who decides to join us this week. As you can see, I have a finished object. I was not expecting to finish. This is the Iris Pullover by Trinn Annelie, and I noted over the weekend on Friday, I was like almost done with the first sleeve, and I was like, you know what, I think I can finish this. So I spent Saturday chugging out the second sleeve, and then I blocked it overnight and was able to wear it to church on Sunday. So I'll stand up real quick. Let me see if I can scoot back here so you can get a good look at it. I did cut out a half row of the bottom here, and that ended up being perfect because I ran out of yarn. I had 2 grams left of the main color and 4 grams left of the brown color, which were the 2 that I was going to repeat at the bottom. So I won yarn chicken. As you can see, this is my shoulder seam here that was supposed to be reversed, and I somehow picked it up the wrong way. So in the actual design, there's supposed to be a lovely knit detail that I messed up. So I noticed it about halfway down the yoke, and I was like, I'm not fixing that. So anyways, there's that modification. I think in the real pattern, she goes all the way down for a 4th repeat, but like I said, I chopped off that last inch or so. And then my sleeves did the full 4 repeats. I did omit the side seams. They're supposed to be side seam purls, but I just added a few stitches and then continued the pattern continuously. I think technically there might be a half pattern repeat for the side seams, but I didn't like that look. I just don't love start and stopping my knitting patterns. If there's something that keeps me from looking at the pattern completely and memorizing it while going in the round, I will change it so that I don't have to look at the pattern more than I have to. So I did that for the body. For the sleeves, there is a, I did add the purl seam detail, and really you can't really tell like on the sweater at all that it's there, but it does break up the pattern just a little bit. It doesn't bother me a whole lot on the sleeves because you are decreasing at the same time. So it's nice to remember, okay, there will be a decrease coming. So I did like that little reminder. I did go back and do a sewn bind off or a sewn steek for all my steeks, because I think I talked about in my last podcast, I did do a crochet reinforcement and it was starting to unravel. So I just went back with my sewing machine and reinforced there. Otherwise, it was a great pattern. She did an excellent job of explaining when to carry your floats, when to decrease. It is a lengthy pattern. I think there are 3 documents in total, but it was definitely worth it. And I think the hardest part was the cast on, and you had a tight amount of stitches at the top. I had to do some, what is it called? Where magic loop. I did magic loop for quite a few rows, like a good inch or 2 before joining completely in the round with my appropriate needles. And that was a little bit cumbersome, but it's definitely doable. But definitely for first colorwork pattern, if you want your handheld, this would be a great one. I don't think I mentioned for the Iris Pullover, I just used a plethora of Knitpicks palette. It's one of my go-to yarns for color work. Held single, and you can find all the information on what colors I used in my Ravelry page. I did notice that the blue of the top of the iris did bleed. I think this color is Bluebell, which was one of my favorites. And I will go back with my 2 grams of yarn and just duplicate stitch there, and hopefully no one except myself will ever notice. I think I even have my leftovers. So I had 2 grams left of, this is Oyster Heather, and then 2 grams left, or 4 grams left of this. I think this one was almond or wheat heather. I wrote in my Ravelry page, like if somebody was following my size and needle and everything, they would need the extra balls for those two colors. So 3 balls in total for both of those, or I think it was 5 for the main color total and then 3 in total for the wheat heather. But like I said, everything's listed in my Ravelry. I wanted to do a good job because I know not many people had knitted the pattern, but people were very interested in the pattern. So I wanted to make sure my notes were a little bit clear on the yarn quantities. I had plenty of yarn left over for all the other colors, just not those two. So I slid in by the hair. Next up, I knit some dorm room boot slippers. They're like slipper socks. It is a free Ravelry pattern, and I actually made these, gosh, in high school, so like 10-ish years ago, if not longer, for my sister who somehow lost hers, and she was really sad about it, and I said, ma'am, I can make you like 20 pairs of those. So I whipped those out. Goodness, it took me 2 nights, but really, if I sat down for 4 hours, I could knit both of them. I just used worsted held double, just some 100% acrylic yarn I had lying around, and then US 9 needles. And it's a very well written pattern. It's like links to a blog spot, but it's well written and easy to understand. And at first I was doing it and I was like, I don't remember how this all works out, but I was like, you know what? If my high school self could do it, I could do it now. And it was easy. You just trust the pattern and eventually it works out. There is some seaming there involved because it's not knit in the round, it's knit flat. So you have to be aware of that. And the seam goes right along the inside of the foot, you know, at the bottom of the foot there. So if you are not careful with your seaming, there could be a lump there. The next pattern that I finished was the Acadia Beanie for my father. I ended up frogging the one that I had last time, made it again. It was still too small, ripped it out again, and I think I knit this hat a total of 6 times, if not 7. And this hat, I think, is still slightly too small, so I may take it back and try to reblock it. What I did was I added the 2.5 inches of stockinette underneath the hat to create a double brim, and I think that just tightened the hat a little bit too much to where my dad was saying it was a little bit uncomfortable for him, but I think if I go back and reblock it, it'll stretch it out and just be a little bit better. I ended up adding 2 more stitches for every repeat, so a total of 6 extra stitches. That's like an extra inch to the hat. So I was hoping that would fit, and honestly, I think it would if he just wore it a little bit, but I'll take it back and finagle with it some more, and we'll go from there. I'm happy to knit him a hat. I'm just a little bit tired of this pattern. So I'm happy to be done with it for now, but eventually I'll just take it back and see what's going on with it. So you probably haven't heard the last of the Acadia Beanie yet. So moving on to works in progress. I am still working on the Blomsterjakke. I pretty much only knit on the Iris pullover since the last time we talked because everything was at various stages. The Blomsterjakke hurt my hands if I knit it on it too long because of the purling through the back loop. So I have it here in my lovely garment bag that my grandmother knit. She sewed, very nice. And here it is in all of its glory. I ended up re-picking up the button band, and I am now using a US 1.5, which is what I used for the bottom hem, and that looks great. So here's the bottom. It looks great. So I picked up the button band again, and I'm actually to the point where I need to add the buttonholes. So I stopped that this morning because I didn't feel like doing buttonhole math. And this evening, hopefully I'll work on the buttonhole math and get going on the other side of the button band. I think what I decided to do was do this side first and see if maybe I could wear the sweater for once and see how it goes. Last time, I don't know if you remember, but there was some rippling along the center seam where the 2 sides of the cardigan met, and I wanted to avoid that. So what I'm gonna do is hopefully do a little bit of a stronger cast off. I think I just used a tubular bind off, and then it created too much stretch there. And I'm hoping that changing the needle size and changing the bind off will help fix that rippling. But if you guys have tips for how to get a button band to not ripple when you put it on, leave your comments below. It does have some positive ease, and so I don't think it's necessarily like a bust circumference ease situation. I think it's more of my needle choice. So if you have thoughts, let me know. I know I was reading a little bit about reinforcing with a ribbon, and I definitely think that could be in this jacket's future, but I just want this one to be done. I've been working on it for almost a year at this point. I was actually looking back, I think I started it in April, and it's almost April, which is blows my mind. So would love to get this done soon, hopefully maybe before Easter. That's the goal that I have in my head. Okay, now let's talk about the Hansholm Sweater by PetiteKnit. This I'm knitting up for my brother-in-law in this lovely West Yorkshire spinner, Croft DK. This is knit up in the US size 6. I did end up splitting for sleeves, and then I had him try it on. He said it was a little bit tight in the underarm, and I think the reasoning behind that was because I put it on try-on tubing, and honestly I just used whatever I had, and I don't think it was wide enough. I think there were plenty of stitches there. It just wasn't necessarily stretched appropriately over his arm, so he thought it was a little bit smaller than it actually was. So I didn't make any changes to the width or go back and fix the raglan at all, because my math is mathing, I think, and so I'm afraid if I go back and add an inch or so, it's just gonna be too big. He did say that the neckline was a little bit too far up. I think it was just like cutting just above his collarbone, and he wanted it to sit a little bit lower. But before I go back and change the collar again, I'm just going to knit the entire sweater and then have him try it on and see if he likes it. I'm afraid if I rip it out and make it a little bit wider or a little bit shorter, the weight of the sweater will bring it down, and then he'll want the collar to be changed. So I'm not going to change the collar until after the sweater is finished, but that's definitely on my mind. I am loving the way this yarn is knitting up. It's super slick and easy compared to another sweater that I'll talk about later. This is a nice reprieve from that. So a lovely stockinette sweater, and now I'm just cruising through the body. Next up, I have the Brume Sweater by Andrea Mowry. I'm actually going to submit this sweater into the March to May knit along for 2025, which is very exciting. I did my first one last year, and I made the tessellated pullover, and I loved that sweater. So this year I'm making the Brume, and it looks probably very similar to what it did last time, except that I split for the sleeves. I think I was just an inch or two above that before last time, but I ran into some difficulties because I was increasing wrong. So this sweater has short rows in the back, and then it has a compound raglan, and I just thought it was a raglan, it was, you know, rows were done differently than a normal raglan. It's not like I was increasing every other row, but I was doing the compounding wrong. So I went back just over this weekend and redid the compounding part and went from there. And I found with the compound raglan, what worked best for me was telling myself, like, what worked best for me in the compound raglan was changing the colors of my stitch markers. So I had green stitch markers for the sleeves, and then sandwiching the body, I used blue stitch markers. So along the raglan seam, the green stitch marker would be on the sleeve side, and then the blue stitch marker would be on the body side. And so if I had a blue stitch marker, that meant I increased on the body, and if it was green, that either meant I was increasing on the sleeves or increasing the entire sweater. I don't want to give away the pattern. So, and then I had another color for knitting completely in the round, like not increasing at all. And I did the pattern and I linked them all together and made a chain. And so when I was at the beginning of the round, I would just slip my needle into the next marker that I was doing. So slipped it, and if the blue was on my needle, that meant I was, you know, increasing only with the body. And that helped me keep track of the compound raglan, and then I could do it, you know, kind of mindlessly. It was like, oh, I know exactly what the step is. So that worked a little bit better for me than just thinking in my head, oh, what's the next round? And then looking at my pattern and trying to remember what section I was on. So that worked really well for me. I'm so happy I split for sleeves. I literally like just split for sleeves. As you can see here, I have one row complete. So I'll probably knit an inch or so, and then I will block it and see how it fits. But so far my math is still mathing, and I'm hoping it's right. I am knitting this up in the Manchelopis. This is a lovely unspun yarn. It's very soft, so it breaks easily. It broke off the sweater right as I was lifting it up to show you guys, which is totally fine. I'll just rip back a few stitches and then splice it back together. I am really enjoying the yarn, except I noticed that I have some elbow pain, which I've never had elbow pain from knitting before. It's definitely different. Usually I get wrist pain or sometimes finger pain from how I hold my needles. But I woke up yesterday with some elbow pain and I was like, you know what? I think that's the Brume. So I'm going slowly on this and only knitting it here or there, like, oh, hello, Ralph. This is Ralph, everybody, for those who have not met him yet. He likes to make his presence known, and I guess now is his time. You doing okay? You doing okay? We'll see where he goes. Rosie was here earlier, but he may enjoy this sweater, huh? Where was I? So I'll reblock it and see how it goes. Want to make sure it fits right because I'm not the best with gauge swatches and my math actually working out on the sweater. I like to make sure I'm blocking as I go to make sure things are fitting the way I want them to before I rip out an entire sweater, because ask me how I know. Okay, moving on. Let's talk about my Seaton Pullover by Marie Wallen. There is a Seaton knit along that's going on. I think the hashtag is Ballin' for Wallen that Jackie and Carmen are doing. I'll link their podcast down below. And last time I told you how I was not really happy with the Knitpicks palette yarn that I picked out. So I have that all here. I'll show you. Let me situate Ralph. Ralphie, we're gonna have to situate you. Ralph is situated and I've got the yarn now. So if you recall, this was my sweater and I took it off the needles. And I just thought it was really loud. And the colors seem a little bit more cool leaning. And I think I'm more of a, clearly he's subtle, I'm more of a warm tone kind of gal. And so, I don't know, this was just too loud for what I was going for. And I was really frustrated, and I created some page documents on my laptop and then came up with a new palette. And I ordered the yarn and I'm still not like quite 100% happy with the yarn. I'm still waiting for one more color from Wool & Company. And so yeah, let's just talk about it. Let me show you instead of telling you. So here was my color palette in the palette by Knitpicks. And you can see the yarns are definitely cool leaning. I think this blue is definitely like more cool, but I think that could be used in the next sweater. But I think everything was just a little bit too dark. So then Ralph's trying to knock over the camera. If you can't hear him, let's get him. Okay, mister. It's okay, we still like you. We still like you. We do. Why don't you go eat your dinner? Yeah, you've got some dinner. Go eat it. Ralph. No, thank you, sir. Can you get down, please? Thank you. Let's get you down. Okay, we'll see how long that lasts. I forgot to also show you the gold of that Knitpicks palette since I was rudely interrupted, and I think there's actually cat hair on my chin, so I apologize if you can see that. It's like actually kind of itchy. Okay, so then I ordered Cascade 220 from Wool & Company, and it's still like too saturated, I think. I definitely think it's better, but I definitely think it could have been more better, if that's a word. So let me show you. It's kind of hard to hold 8 balls of yarn at the same time. So here's the palette from Cascade 220. I definitely think it's more warm toned, and definitely like I wanted colors to be less saturated. So instead of this green, I got this green, and I think that's a better choice. The pinks are definitely more warm toned, which is what I wanted too. As you can see here. And then the dark cranberry color, I decided to do a brown instead. And then the blues are also much less saturated. I mean, the gray is pretty similar, and honestly, the gray from the Knitpicks palette is a little bit lighter. And I was just looking at the gold because I was trying to get it less saturated, and it ended up being like a shade darker, which I find hilarious. But that's okay. What I'm going to end up doing is do a swatch and do like a actual swatch if I can gain the muster and actually do a swatch of all the colors so I can see what they look like, and go from there. I'm still waiting for one more light blue color from Wool & Company. I'm hoping that it'll be a nice like sky blue color, but we'll see what shows up, because clearly my color sense, I don't know if like there's something wrong with my laptop and the colors are just a little bit off or what. I do know with Wool & Company things are a little bit brighter because of the white background, which is fantastic, right? Like the way that the images look on Wool & Company are gorgeous. That's why I like the website so much, because of the way that the colored yarns are shown. But I just have to figure out the color palette. And it could just be that this project is scrapped and then I decide what else to do with this yarn. But I have plenty of yarn to choose from. I honestly still may use some of the Knitpicks palette with the Cascade 220, just hold the palette double and the Cascade 220 single, and go from there. I know it's not really equal, but I think it'll all work out. So let's talk about all my other acquisitions. Some of this you heard about in my previous podcast because I had like just ordered it and now it has arrived. First, let's talk about the rest of the Wool & Company order. I ended up picking up the Knitting for Olive Merino and their soft silk mohair. These are both in the color bottle green. And interestingly enough, like I think the Knitpicks Aloft mohair is softer than the Knitting for Olive mohair. I don't know if anyone else has discovered that or if like I'm the only one. I mean, it's definitely soft, don't get me wrong, but I just kept hearing all about the soft silk mohair from Knitting for Olive, and honestly I think the Knitpicks may have it beat. But I'm really excited. This one I'm trying to make the Cardi Jumper by Vert Knit. It's this lovely stockinette cardigan that's knit flat, and I'm hoping to do the I-cord edging for that. I know there's a double knit button band for it, but I think I like the I-cord edging better. So that's what this yarn is for, and I almost swatched for it this weekend, but I'm telling myself you gotta get further along in your stockinette projects and then I can swatch for this or swatch for my Seaton. That was another thing too. I was like, you gotta finish your iris and then you can work on your Seaton, because I started with my Seaton, got frustrated, and went to my iris. So moving on, eventually I will do a swatch for that. Next up here, I picked up some Patent Croy from Joann's, because Joann's is going out of business. And honestly, I was thinking today I should pick up some buttons from Joann's too while I'm at it. But first I picked up 200 grams each of their socks, the sock yarn. This is the colorway 75% wool, 25% nylon. That's not what I'm looking for. Geranium, and then just like their natural color, I'm sure it's called natural muslin. Okay. And 200 grams each of both of these. And the geranium I thought was a little bit more color changing, but really it's just like a variegated red. And then the muslin is just a plain natural color. And I'm thinking about making a t-shirt with this. I'm not sure what, but I think it would be a good t-shirt. Like, I know I already have yarn picked out for the Hey Sailor tee by Andrea Mowry. But like something in that sense, like a lovely color work, all over color work t-shirt like that, I think would be really nice for this yarn. I also just picked up one skein of their koi socks. This is in the colorway, I think it's Orchid, Midnight Orchid. And I had seen this floating around. I think maybe I saw somebody knit a pair of socks with it, and I just thought the colors were very nice. They're actually cool toned, which I find hilarious because I'm more of a warm tone kind of gal, as we just discussed. But I'll make a pair of socks either for myself or somebody else in my family. I'm honestly not much of a sock knitter, but I think that there are a few occasions in my life where I could use a sock, and something like this where it's self-striping would make it, you know, easier on my brain and more potato chippy, where I want to knit the sock instead of just abandon them. Moving on, I've got some fisherman's wool. This is the first time I've actually worked with it. This is the color Oatmeal. And then I also have the natural color in the color Natural. And I'm hoping for Oatmeal to make a book club cardigan by Starry Nordland. I think I talked about this last time. It is a lovely cabled cardigan, and a lot of people knitted up in fisherman's wool and had great success. I have plenty of this yarn. I didn't realize these were 200 grams each. So we have a lot of yarn to make this cardigan, and I know, yeah, 227 grams. And I know that a lot of people had issues with running out of yarn. And if I ran out of yarn, I think it would be like a new record, because oh boy, did I accidentally buy too much. I think I bought 800 grams total. So hopefully that's plenty. If not, we may have questions for Sorry. I also picked up 800 grams of the colorway Natural, and I love the idea of an Ester jacket. I just think like it looks so beautiful on PetiteKnit that I'm afraid it's not going to live up to my expectations. So I'm not quite sure exactly what I'm going to do with that color yet, but I use Natural with like everything. Like this is a natural, I mean, it's not natural, it's white, but it's a natural color. There's a natural color in this. I pretty much use Natural as a lovely base color in anything. So I'm totally fine with having 800 grams lying around. Before I talk about my last yarn, has any of you ordered yarn from Wool & Company and then they have to ship it from Europe? I ordered some yarn, gosh, it was probably in January at this point, if not like the first week in February, and I haven't received it yet. So I'm gonna reach out to Wool & Company and ask them where it is. I know they had to specially order the yarn from Europe, and so I don't know like how long that normally takes, but if any of you have had issues, usually their customer service is on it. So I don't think it's them. I think it's more of like a shipping thing. I just like am waiting for my cotton merino so I can make my Hey Sailor tee, because I wanted that to be the next thing on my list, and also the yarn for my mother's sweater. I'm still waiting on the, like, I think it's Peer Gynt or Sunday Morning DK, some Santa's yarn that I'm using for my mother's sweater, and I really want to get working on those, but I don't have the yarn, so I'm just kind of waiting. Finally, a newish yarn store opened up near me, about 20 minutes down the road, and honestly, I like knew it was there, but their website didn't tell me like what yarns were available. And if a yarn store does not tell me what kind of yarn they have, I don't know, I'm just like, do I really want to go there? Because I know if I go there, I'll buy yarn. So I try to not frequent. A cat just attacked another cat. Oh, hope they're okay. You okay? You okay? Rosie's fine. And Ralph is also fine. Rosie's the one who attacked. She usually is. So anyways, I usually am like, I like to know what a yarn store has, and I like put it in my brain, and I frequent them, you know, when I need to buy yarn. But also if I hadn't been there in a while, I like to go back and refresh my memory of like what each yarn store has in stock. Because I think where I'm located, 1, 2, 3, 4, is that right? 1, 2, 3, 4. There are 4 yarn stores near me, and each one has similar yarns. Like they all have Malabrigio. They all usually have Barocco. I think one has Rowan, but like a few shades here and there. It's not like a vast supply of all of them. So I like to keep it in my brain there. And so anyways, this new yarn store popped up, the 4th one, and I was like, looking on their website, trying to figure out what they had in stock, and I couldn't find anything. So I was like, you know what, I won't go there. unless like I need to, because it's in a different part of town that I don't normally frequent, even though it's still super close to me. But it's just, you know, not the side of town I usually frequent. So I was on that side of town and I thought, you know what, you should go to the yarn store. And I did. And they had Noro Madeira. I couldn't believe it. In the colorway Saki. So I picked up 4 skeins of these. It's this lovely rainbow tweedy, thick, thin yarn. I think it's technically a worsted weight. It's made in Japan. It's expensive because it's coming from halfway around the world. But it's also, I think it's wool, acrylic, and silk. It's like, what is it, like a 60-30? Oh, yep, 60-30-10 blend. So 60% wool, 30% silk, and 10% alpaca. So I'm sure it's gonna knit up beautifully. It feels a little bit rustic, but that's totally fine. I was eyeing this yarn and I was like, my brother was in Japan and I was like, hey, if you see Noro yarn in Japan, I would love some. So it's been on my mind for a few months now and I almost ordered it, but it's really hard to find the popular colorways, which it's not like I necessarily need the popular colorways, but there were some that I was looking out for that they didn't have in stock. Like I checked a few websites and no one had it in stock. And I went to the yarn store and it's just like tucked away, not on prominence at all. And I was like talking with the owner and I said, ma'am, if people knew you had Noro, I think people would come. I was so excited and she's like, actually, I just picked it out because my son wanted me. He really liked the colors. And I was like, oh, is he a knitter or a crocheter? She's like, no, he just really liked the colors. I was like, that is amazing. She's got a real gem on her hands. So anyways, it was a lovely store. The owner was super lovely too. She's still working on inventory and things like that. She's almost open a year at this point, but yeah, it was great to stop by. So anyways, I think that's it for acquisitions. I think I have enough yarn to show you. I need to stop. I need to stop ordering yarn. I ordered some more yarn today for more hats for my family. So it's all for a purpose. All of this yarn has a purpose, except probably like the natural wool from Lions brand. But every yarn has a home. It just needs to be knitted up. So anyways, I got a lot of knitting to do. Please let me know in the comments down below what you're eyeing for spring plans. I've got some spring plans in my mind, and I'll probably make a video about it here shortly. So yeah, happy knitting. Hope you all had a good week. Please let me know what you're knitting on as